and say, oh my God, blood here, blood there, blood everywhere. What is the story that you are telling the people? I mean, that is the same that we say that don't do that. Tell us that there are 10 people dead. 2 of them, their legs have been cut. Afterwards, when you express your opinion about blood, we understand.
But if in an accident where people have decapitated, lost limbs, there is blood. So is the journalist wrong to say blood everywhere?
The reason why you were taken there. I mean, it is about the human persons who have suffered consequentially. You know, because there are people who can stand there in the middle of their blood and they will not wink. Okay? Now, when you begin to put your emotions ahead of the facts that have happened, you are denying them of accessing what information is available.
So emotions before facts.
No, but that is part of opinions. The thing that we are saying is that tell us the facts. Then you can give your opinion about that. Once the facts are available to us, we can make a determination for ourselves. But when you mix the facts and your opinions in a manner that we don't know which are the facts and which are your opinions, then you are denying us access to the information. Understand that as a journalist, it is only a privilege. Because if every one of us were there, we would have seen the event ourselves. But you have the privilege of going there and telling us. And because we must understand what you are seeing, we must not see it from your understanding of the thing. But what is it that you are seeing? Tell us what you are seeing, and after that, then you tell us how you feel about what you are seeing. And so it is when you decide that you are bringing your feelings into what you are seeing, that is where we talk about the fact that please check yourself. But nobody says that the journalist, because the journalist also lives in the community. Whatever happens in that community, the journalist is part of it, you know, whether good or bad. The reason why people will advise that it should be an objectivity, listen, that people have spoken about it and all that. But when you say that this thing, I don't mean that it is half. They use that as the test of objectivity. Now the test is that, yeah, the optimist will say it is half full. The pessimist will say it is half empty. Now the fact is that it is half filled, right? That is the fact. But when you begin to say that I don't understand this watakura, the way that they package it, what is it about? That then you are not telling us about what we should see. You know, so the moment that you tell us that it is half full, whether it is half empty or half full, at least there's a half. We have established the basic fact. The rest of us are going to make a determination based on the real fact that there's something inside the bottle.
But are we doing it? Because we have a responsibility to be truth tellers in all our activities as journalists. So I'll come to you, Ms. Ayeboafo, to pick more thoughts. But I want Anaya to finish his submission from earlier. I believe that we've managed to establish the contact with him now. Nana, thank you. I hope we can hear you better now. Hello, Nana, are you still with us? Right, so go on and tell us what you think. We are talking objectivity, we are talking how far we've come as a media then and now. I think we may have lost him. Mr. Kokutse, would you like to give some thoughts on this particular issue of are we being objective?
I think there's a confusion over this whole issue. You see, news is news. It cannot be defined in any way. Opinion piece is opinion piece. It cannot be you cannot use that for news. And if you want to do an analysis, you cannot put your opinion in it. You must use facts. But it looks like some people want to mix news reporting with opinions, which does not go well. I mean, if you, like you was talking about accident, if you go to any accident place now, what a media house should present is what has happened. How many people are dead? Those who did not die, where they've been sent to, names, age. Present those basic facts. If you want to do a feature, you present the same thing, but based on facts. But if you want to do an opinion piece, That is where you can go and be descriptive, talk about things, and that's your personal opinion. Nobody can hold it against you, you know. But if you miss the two, you create problems.
I remember that for some of us who are fairly new in the journalism space and we find ourselves working at GBC Radio had its own strict editorial code. And if you brought a script and there were certain words in there, be sure that they would be taken out because they are deemed descriptive, and we would not entertain descriptive words on the network. Since the onset of the coming into the space of private media, we've seen more and more of these vocal, what some call sensational accounts of events. We are also hearing that opinions matter. But where do we draw the line between someone going too far and someone just telling the story, especially when it comes to radio and print, where the benefits of visuals are not present?
Journalism hasn't changed. I've worked for Associated Press. I've worked for Daily Nation. I've worked for Wall Street Journal. Journalism has not changed in these areas. So there's no way I can write a story for AP, put in opinion. There's no way. It wouldn't be news. You know, if they ask me to do an opinion piece, that would be very different. But if an accident happens and I'm going to write, there's no way I'm going to say the car was driving in a very zigzag manner, the driver was not looking straight, and that's not a news story, you know.
But Mr. Ayeboafo, I'm sure he would confirm to you that he receives loads of complaints from across, from persons who perhaps think the state media is too toned down, and for reports that suggest that the private media is too overly vocal in the conduct of our duties. And I ask again, perhaps I'll put this to you, where do we draw the line? When you get complaints, what do you do?
No, the point is this, that, you know, as executive secretary of the National Media Commission at the time, when I was executive secretary, one of my biggest problems was at GBC. You know, when Jake became Minister for Information, he had issued a statement inviting management of state media to a meeting. And we issued a counter statement that he cannot, as a minister, he cannot invite management of state media to any meeting without recourse to the National Media Commission. And then the GBC management people called and said, "Are you the one giving us the money?" I said, what is this? I mean, it is about your independence. It's about your assertiveness. It's about you determining the kind of stories that you publish without any interference from any external person. You know, the thing is that sometimes some of the people, when they speak about the state-owned media being timid, I mean, sometimes some of them are misinformed because they want you to use the kind of language that is so antagonistic. There's a way that you can talk about it without necessarily antagonizing anybody. Listen, I wrote, as an acting editor of the Daily Graphic, I wrote an editorial on the presidential jet. Now, the presidential jet was a very controversial topic at the time. Where they bought it, how much they bought it, and all that. There was so much politics about it. Now, I had to be very measured in what I wrote. And I'm saying that, look, they were blaming, I mean, everybody was saying that it was Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings. I said, look, assuming that the president was not a pilot and we needed to go and buy a plane, would the president be involved in the matter? That the public servants who went and purchased that plane, they should not put the blame on anybody. They should not play the ostrich. They must come and tell us where they bought the plane, how much they bought the plane. You know, and the day after, they issued a press statement, which led to others investigating to find out that the address that they gave in Cayman Island or something did not even exist. But at least they responded. You know, there must be a way. For instance, when Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings went to the trade fair and condemned Apino soap, I wrote and I said, President, don't talk like that. and that the president has traveled all over the world canvassing for investors to come to Ghana. He has done very well. But no investor will come and invest in Ghana without consulting with local entrepreneurs. And so when you travel wooing people to come here to invest and you condemn local investors, you are destroying whatever mission that you are undertaking for yourself. And so if you are the president, if no matter how much you feel about the local entrepreneur, you must not speak to them that way. You must find a way of bringing them, so that once you get their buy-in, they are the ones who will be attracting the outsiders to come. Now, if you're not very careful, in my language, they say that when somebody says, come and take food into your big mouth, it is not an insult, but it is an insult. It is not an insult if you have no dignity of yourself, because the size of your mouth has nothing to do with your hunger. And so if I say, come and take food into your big mouth and you rush and take it, you have sacrificed your integrity for your hunger. If you have dignity, you tell that other person, please, no. Because your dignity is far more important than the hunger.
Let's hold that thought and put the ball in Nana Yaw's net. Hopefully, third time lucky, 3 is a charm, and we'll be able to hear you now. Nana, what can you tell us about your experiences as a journalist, even with the private media, usually catching a lot of heat for what some would call unprofessional conduct? Do you think that is the case?
Unprofessional conduct, yes. Most of the times, I think especially those of us in the private sector are being unprofessional. But when I hear that, I ask myself, what is your definition of professionalism and what is unprofessional? Earlier on, I was talking about the fact that if I am a journalist, I live in a community, I live in the country as well. Every policy or government affects me as well. However, my duty as a journalist is first to report the truth and the facts of the issue to the people, because information is a public good. The public depends on us as journalists to make decisions as to who leads the country, investment opportunities, and all that. They depend on us to make those decisions. So if I'm going to report on some of these things, I must be factual first. That is my duty, and I owe it a duty towards my public. That said, when the fact has been established and I have an opinion, I should be able to clearly separate that opinion from the fact. Let me give the facts to my listeners first, or my viewers first. When that is that they are old enough, or they know what they can do with that information they have from me. That I should not at any point in time attempt to mix my opinion with the fact. The listener or the viewer out there is not at the screen. He or she is not privy to the information I am privy to. That is why he's tuning in to either watch me or listen to me. First of all, it is incumbent on me to tell him or her what is happening. Whatever he chooses to do with the information is up to him. But I should not infuse my opinion in the facts as I have to report to the person. And sometimes in our attempt to put out our opinion, we overdo it. And that is why at a point in time, the issues of unprofessionalism and stuff like that will come in. So sometimes it's a very difficult thing to choose. But I think that it is not wrong for me as a journalist to make my opinions known, so long as I can keep them as opinion and I can make my listeners know that this is my opinion. It is not anything happening on the ground. It's not the fact of the issue. The fact has been clearly given, but this is purely my opinion. That for me is accepted. But to leave the facts out there and to be opinionated throughout when people are there waiting to listen to what exactly is happening on the ground, that is where I disagree.
Nana, do you buy the assertion that the media in local language makes the line even more blurred when it comes to objectivity?
I will not say because of the local language, but I would say that it is journalism in general these days. Truth is, if you compare standards then, when we had only the state broadcaster, to these days that we have the media pluralism, because of that we have so many media houses and so many newspapers reporting, doing everything. I would say that pluralism itself has come with its own impediment. That must be established. Now, if somebody wants to use this standard in English to say that, okay, for instance, in English news, you are supposed to read what is on paper, and that is, you are supposed to stick to it. You don't have any other job to do than to stick to what is on the paper. I understand. But that person should also understand that in broadcasting, in the local dialect or the local languages, the concept of news in local language is different from the concept of news in English. So the person accusing me of being unprofessional because I am broadcasting in a local dialect, to first of all appreciate where I am coming from. And if that is established, he perhaps will change his opinion on whether the local stations or people, the media houses broadcasting in the local languages are unprofessional or not. I don't think that the language is the issue, but the people there doing the job, the journalists there, the broadcast ones you have there, their professionalism, their training, where they come from, the training they have undergone, what gives them the right to be there, to be doing what they do at the time they are doing. That is what I think is the problem, and it is not more about the language they use.
This is getting more interesting by the minute. I wish you had the benefit of having eyes in the studio. You'll see our senior colleagues nodding at some points to your submission, and at other times, both of them unanimously just shaking their heads and saying yes and no. I know that Ibrahim is still with us, but because I've seen such, obvious reactions from the two, Nana, if you would allow, let me see where Mr. Ayeboafo and Mr. Kokutse agree and disagree with the submission that you've made. So we are talking about the local media when it comes to professionalism or perceptions of unprofessionalism. Where do you agree with him and where do you not? Mr. Ayeboafo, I'll start with you.
Well, the National Media Commission has developed guidelines on local language broadcasting. And I think that it is imperative that every one of us addresses ourselves to those issues that they have raised. I mean, I'm not going to say that it is only the private media that acts unprofessionally. State media also acts unprofessionally some of the time. The difficulty with the local language is that it's a novelty. It's only started not too long ago. The question about the reporting on a rape case and saying home someone, what is professional about that? I mean, somebody has been raped. Now you're talking about somebody being raped, and then you are describing it as if it is a joke. And says it was writing that say like home someone. Where does the home someone fit into the news? Look, there is nothing like key news is different from English news. News is news in whatever language that you are using it. Because if you admit that English news is different, then when you are in Britain, what kind of story are you going to tell?
Okay, so
because in Britain, English is their mother tongue, and so if you are speaking in Twi, and you say that English news is different from Twi news, and then the British people who listen to only English, what are they going to say?
So let me put this other question to Mr. Kokutse, then I'll be back to pick your thoughts. You see, the problem for some who listen to local language.
Let me just add here. You see, GBC used to have this news in the local languages.
We still do. Yes. Yeah. 6 p.m.
So, how come this news station don't learn from the way it used to be done, or GBC does it? Because they just present the news. They don't go into this encomiums,
You see, networks are doing what sells their stations. Nana, 1 second. Let me put this question to my senior Francis here. The local language tends to be more descriptive, according to some, because there are some phrases in English that do not quite have an exact local interpretation. And so I find that as a native speaker of the Ga language, sometimes when you hear something in English, you have to describe it in Ga for people to understand. Could that be a reason why we are seeing some of these complaints? Because the local languages have had to be descriptive, because sometimes, depending on what subject you are discussing, there is no clear local language phrase or expression for what you're reporting.
I remember names like Okodagadu,
Kwesi Donko,
the epic guys, I can't remember their names now. They had the opportunity to be descriptive, but they were not doing that because they will not be allowed to do that. You see, news presentation is news presentation. If you go outside of it, you are either joking or not being serious.
Nana, what do you think?
Okay. So in my submission, I said that the problem is not the diction. It is the people working in there. You see, people assume that everybody broadcasting in their local languages is, excuse my language, uneducated to some extent. But you have key broadcasters that have studied to the master's level. That is why you will not find every key newscaster doing this senior Ayeboafo is talking about. I do agree, those things are not part of news. They are not admissible, even in the vernacular. They are not admissible. So I was saying earlier that it is not because I am using the key, but because of my training and my professionalism in even using the language I am using, that is the problem. So it is not the language that is the problem, but the kind of training I have, okay, the kind of supervision and the kind of restrictions that I have, that allows me to do certain things and will not allow me to do certain things. It is not about the language, but how exposed the person is. Yes, I agree, news is news, so long as you keep it as news. That is why I said earlier that information is the public news. The public is waiting for you to put the news out there. It is not about your trivialities and jokes like that. Somebody's daughter is raped, and you are there making jokes or making fun out of it. You are making fun not because you speak true, but because you are unprofessional. So it is not about the language, but it is about the training the people in there, the people doing that thing have, that allows them to do what they are doing. But I will not say it is the language that is allowing them to do what they do.
You are a strong defender of the local language. I'm so impressed with you keeping the line and saying, listen, it's a training thing. So perhaps I'll put this to Ibrahim Alhassan. When we talk about training, conversations have been going around for a long time about who should be called a journalist. And it's become even more critical now because we are having an ethical professional conduct conversation for people to clearly define. I've had conversations about, should we give, a professional certificate like other professions do to people who can practice as journalism? And how do we weigh that against citizen journalism, which new media has brought to us? Now, there are bloggers and vloggers and TikTokers and YouTubers and all manner of professionals calling themselves journalists.
Well, Thelma, that's the problem. But let me touch a bit on the local language news broadcaster. I think the challenge is that the players in that subsector are using a different measuring rod. So they mix news with comedy. And to them, it's acceptable. And to the advertisers, that's what gets them the numbers. To the media owners, that's what gets them the money. And it works. So it will be difficult. And that's another difficulty is, in which language is the news story written? It's in English. And they are supposed to translate on air. As they read in English, they speak in Twi. Obviously, that will be difficult. That will be a challenge. Yes, I admit that when you engage and they tell you there are some other Akan-speaking media houses that demand that the script is written in Twi. Other Gapim Twi or Asante Twi or Fanti, yes, it's written. But I can dare say that about 90% of them have their scripts in English and they read them out in Twi. If you are to script, I'm not sure the Zoom sound will be cleared by your editor to go and read on air. Because they depend on the ingenuity of these presenters, just like the Kumawood actors and actresses. You are given a script, all right, but you are told that add what you can add to add flavor to the script.
In some cases.
Then ensure
in some cases.
Yeah, of course.
Ibrahim, Kumawood will come for you because there are some very very structured script when it comes to the local movie industry. So let's not, put all of them in this place.
It's not all, it's not in all cases. So, for instance, we've heard many of the Kumawood stars speak to this, right? But of course, that's just an aside. The point I'm making is that if we want to measure the local stations with the same rod, the same standard as everybody else, then let's ensure that their scripts are equally in the language that they speak and they are comfortable with. If you're unable to read Twi, you have no business casting news in Twi. It's basic. So with that aside, let me come to the professionalism, but the certificate. I agree. Because, see, even many of us are guilty of that. We hear radio presenters and we call them journalists. And because of that, the listening public has equally decided to paint everybody they hear on air with that same brush that you are a journalist. No. So I believe, just like the doctors will have the association that ensures that you take an exams and get a certificate, a license, that can be withdrawn if you do ABC or you go against the details of the profession, just like the lawyers have said. I think teachers as well, it's about time we had a similar thing. And here, I'm not tying this down to going to a journalism school. What I'm saying is that if you decide to go to your level, your UCC, your UDS, your KNUST, and you want to practice as a journalist, there must be some standardized examination that you take, after which you are given a license to practice. And it comes with some responsibilities. If you breach any of those things, your license can be withdrawn. It will help all of us because for the sanctity of the profession, you show up at the program and everybody comes and registers and calls himself a journalist. After the program, you and I, and I'm sure our big senior, Yaw Boadu-Ayeboafo, has been speaking to this for God knows how long. Then these quacks, so to speak, will be weeded out. So I'm all for it. I can't tell you whether it will happen tomorrow or the day after, but hopefully one day we get there to at least see the profession, because the profession is being bastardized for far too long.
Ibrahim, thank you for sharing that thought. So presenters are not journalists. It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? Because when you hear a voice on television or radio, you're tempted to think this is a professional journalist. But within the broadcasting industry, there are subsects of persons, of on-air personalities. Where do you stand on this debate? Should journalists be licensed?
You see, I have my own opinions about that.
Share it with us.
And even more, as the chairman of the National Media Commission, it's something that I will not go to. Looking at our history. Listen, I mean, the people who started practicing medicine before it became codified, where did they learn it from? They were treating people. Even at the time of Adam and all that, they were treating people, The thing is that, journalism, the problem about certifying journalists is about the question of freedom of expression. Because journalism amplifies that freedom. Because when you want to express yourself, how do you do it? You do it through the media, right? And so the media then becomes an avenue. I may not, and all over the world, even in the developed countries, you do not necessarily need to go and do journalism before you start practicing journalism. What they insist is that once you say that you want to practice journalism, then you must follow the basic rules of journalistic practice. Because we cannot for one moment say that those of us who went to journalism school are more virtuous than those who didn't go. There are some of us who went to journalism school, have all the certificates. And yet, the thing that we do are worse than those who have never stepped into
virtuousness versus viciousness.
So certification is not necessarily that. Its orientation is important. Understanding something is different from being orientated towards something. Having that attitude, the sanctity of it. What is worse in our context is where people err. They have done what is unprofessional. You are explaining things to them and they will even do worse than that. They insist that they will do it repeatedly as if it is manliness to do what is wrong. And that is the danger. You know, the other lesson about our gentleman about unprofessional lesson. I mean, nobody has said the language is a problem. The encomium that they add, it's like going to church. You know, I mean, you go to church. Professor Kusianka once wrote about that. You know, they go to the Deva, right? The guy comes, including even university students. I mean, when they are going to vote, the one who can speak big English gets the vote. When you ask them what the man said, they may not understand. So Professor Kusianka once wrote and said, yeah, they'll talk, say, Otoo brofo. But what did he say? Oh, Otoo brofo. Otoo brofo pa. But the substance of it, they will not be able to tell you. You go to church, say, hey, Osofo you preachy yo. Or can I say, oh, preachy. Now that is the reason why we say it is unprofessional, because at the end of the day, when they have finished presenting the news, if you ask the people who are listening to them, they remember the entertainment more than the facts.
So crack the whip. You are the NMC.
No,
you have the power
the
to
NMC is
call
not.
people to
the
order.
NMC can only advise. The NMC, the law does not give the whip to the NMC to go and beat anybody. I mean, Article 173 is clear that the NMC cannot and should not direct professionals as to what they should do. So NSA can advise that, oh, when you are writing your story, try and do this. But the NMC cannot. I mean, they cannot tell GBC which story they should make the headline news. GBC will decide that. But what NMC can advise GBC is that, please, let the story that you take as your headlines be very, very substantive in nature. As to what happens on a daily basis, you will do that. That's why we have developed guidelines. And we call them guidelines, not regulations. Because if we want to make regulations, that has to go to Parliament. And it's Parliament that can make laws for this country. You know, we will make, the instrument, it will go there, it will be there for 21 sitting days. If Parliament does not reject it by 2/3 of all members, then it becomes law. But don't forget, in 2015, NMC came out with an instrument. In fact, it passed through Parliament. You know, content regulations instrument. The Giba people went to court, and it is within their descent to go to court. The Supreme Court said it was unlawful and unconstitutional. And so in the face of that reality, then NMC cannot say that this. So what the NMC has developed those guidelines. I mean, those who are willing and ready and want to practice as professionals, they should study those documents, understand the principles that have been espoused. And indeed, the NMC used professionals themselves to develop those guidelines. And so those guidelines are not coming from outsiders. They are coming from people who have practiced the profession and they understand the nuances and all that. You know, so it means that they have reflected upon the profession and come out with standards that, in their opinion, can help every one of us achieve the objectives that we have set for ourselves. So, I mean, there's a constraint, you know. If we want the NMC to police everybody, it may lead into some negativity. Because all over the world, the best places where journalism are practiced are those who are self-regulated, where they regulate themselves and they follow that. Our difficulty is that in our part of the world, we think that peer review doesn't matter. But in those areas that they are respected, they respect professionalism. When you are friends, when the people within your profession tell you that, Thelma, this thing that you did, it is no good. It is the biggest indictment on your professional conduct. You know, because you don't expect people who are lay are the ones to determine what you have to do. It's the professional people here. If I say Thelma, oh, forget about Ayeboafo, he's too known. What does he know about? He was writing only for graphic. What does he know about broadcasting? Meanwhile, when we went to school, we studied all of those subjects together, including public relations, including advertising. You know, and so we understand them. But except that we chose to practice one of those things. You know, when we begin to hear ourselves, when we begin to listen to ourselves, and we take from within and improve upon what we do, because at the end of the day, we say that we are informing the people. Any moment that we seem and we understand that we have misinformed, it is our duty to go back to the people, Because otherwise people are going to take decisions based on the information that we have provided, and it will be ill-advised for some of them to do certain things that sometimes, at least in 2 instances, when the LGBTQ came, there was a group of people who issued a counter statement against LGBTQ. Suddenly, the media that wants everybody to express themselves descended on these people and started calling them as gay and lesbian individuals. When the only thing that they were saying was that the law, provisions in the law were very, very problematic. And that there was a need for all of us to rethink. We said that we should be given the freedom to express our views. But when others express their views, they are stupid, they are useless.
So are we as tolerant of divergent views as we are of views that we think suit us? Because we are talking about where we are as a media and how far we've come. Yeah. Are we more tolerant now? And we'll be taking a quick break very, very shortly. But I want to pick your thoughts on this matter before we get to the second half of our conversation.
If we talk about being tolerant, you're talking about the media houses?
I'm talking about even professionals within the space, like Mr. Ayeboafo said. Yeah. If you're doing something, you're saying something that another professional calls you out on, or even in our interactions with the public that we serve, and of tolerating divergent views on our platforms, because that's the spirit of the Constitution, to give everybody, even minorities, an opportunity to have a say on issues that affect
something
them.
Is lacking here, training. You see, in-service training, to let people know what they are supposed to do on the job, open their minds as to what is new. I was at times for 10 years. There was never a time that I was trained to understand that my story that I published have something to do with circulation advertising. I didn't know about this. I was always asked to write stories every day until I left Times, went to work somewhere else, where at the first quarter I was asked to write a paper on how my page was going to increase circulation. You see, so it's the same way. If we keep training people to know that, look, it's not only your opinion that matters. As a media house, you are open to, it's a marketplace. But I don't think many people understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, but if I can give you one example.
A quick one.
Yeah. There were youth of Sunyane Catholic Church. There's a university at Fiapo. Yeah. Now, it was not getting the required number of students. So the Catholic Church decided to set up this Catholic Institute of Accountancy in Accra, so that when they generate money from here, they can send some to Sunyane to do that. Now, one day, the Catholic youth in Sunyane went on the rampage, that they did not understand why the Catholic Church was undermining the university there by setting up something here. They described their bishops in unprintable words. I wrote that what the youth were doing was not right. Now they sent a rejoinder. And so that for about 1 week, my people were keeping it. They had not let me see it. So one day I was rummaging through letters and I came across this letter from and I asked the features editor, why are you keeping this letter here? He said, the worst. I said, please publish it. Because we have published our site. Publish their site. The public out there will read what they are writing, and they will read what we wrote, and they will determine whether they are more sensible than we. Because we're advising them that they should be careful. Because tomorrow they may go to the same bishops to confess their sins, and they want the penny. And you have described them in very bad. And we published it. Now you see, the day after we published it, not knowing they had posted another letter, said that why were we keeping their letter unpublished? And when the next day after their letter was published, when we got that, I said, we see that if we are not published it, they will have said that it is because of
it was deliberate.
A week after, they were apologizing to the Catholic Bishops' Conference. And so if we had not permitted their letter to be published, right, they may not have apologized. But because we allowed them to express their views, and it is very, very important that we should tolerate every view. The only thing that we should not tolerate is intemperate language.
Right. Let's pick these thoughts from the two guys who are also on are joining us on our virtual platforms, and then perhaps we'll take a quick break. We are talking about the journalism in Ghana beyond the headlines. This is a special GBC round table to mark our 88th anniversary, and this is being brought to you in partnership with ATL. Purchase an ATL fabric from number 40 Kwame Nkrumah Avenue opposite the Swansea Shopping Arcade in Accra, or online at atlfabrics.com. ATL, bringing fabrics to life. We're streaming live on our online platforms, Facebook at Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. You may also be hearing us on Unique FM 95.7. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll pick some of your thoughts and we'll get into another dimension of the conversations. Remember, you can send your thoughts to us on our WhatsApp number 055-3983-405, 055-398.
GBC at 88, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana.
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
In every land and clime, there are motivators, leaders, bellwethers. They inspire and have attained eminence in their field. Courageously, they braved all odds to follow their dream and make a mark. All in an effort to protect our nation and make the world a better place. Every Monday at 8:15 p.m., GBC News shares intriguing stories of our legends when we give them the platform for the highs and lows and the Roka moments of pride. Make a date this and every Monday for our icons on Legends of Our Time at 8:15 p.m. to 9:15 p.m. on GBC News, and a repeat on Sundays 6 p.m. GBC News and Thursday at 4 p.m. on GTV. Our legends, they light up our world and make us proud with their hard work.
GBC at 88, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana. GBC at 88, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana.
Staying on, you may be watching us live on GBC News, GTV, or listening to us on Unique FM 95.7. Thank you for joining this special broadcast. It's a roundtable discussing journalism beyond the headlines. How far have we come and how much further do we have to go? We've invited your comments, and I'm going to read some of them on our screens now. Most of you talking about the local language and the challenges that we've had within that space. The first one on the screen is talking about how most of them take a whole minute to mention their names. And this texter is saying it's irritating. Another message on our screens, my humble suggestion is that the Akan news presenters, newscasters, especially at most FM and TV stations, should be trained. News is not a joke. Akan news is the same as English. So they're giving some examples. Rape is Simona. What assumes some got to do with this? Those presenters should be serious a bit, please. And sending us regards there. Thank you for sending your comments to us. Kindly educate us after greeting on the difference between a journalist and a reporter. My question that follows is, does NMC actually monitor the reports and commentaries from the so-called media? Michael Sapong sent us this. Is a tutor at Offenso College of Education. So is there a difference between a journalist and a reporter? Once I go back to my panel, I'll find out what their thoughts are. I find this discussion very educated. The problem with the private media is they embellish news. Normally, when the recorded message is played, it is totally different from the narration by the newsreader. The guilty ones are the local language stations. Okay, so you're sharing your thoughts with us. These are the opinions of those who are sending these messages to us, and not the opinions of GBC. The role of Ghanaian journalists in consolidation of multi-party systems of governance. Question to the chairman of the NMC is, how should the media report debates of 137 NPP members of parliament and 137 NDC members daily ongoing debates? Alhaji Dauda sent us this from Medina Estate. So polarization is something that we'll talk about in this second part of our discussion. Good evening to your distinguished guest. I think the abuse of media freedom in Ghana emanates from the use of untrained people who have been given the chance to operate in the media space. Joseph sent us this from Achimota ABC. Keep your messages coming across, and we'll read a few more of them as we go along on this special roundtable. We'll take another quick break. Let me make another quick acknowledgement of our sponsors, ATL, bringing fabrics to life. Buy an ATL fabric from the Swansea Shopping Arcade area, and you can also go to atlfabrics.com to make a purchase. ATL, bringing fabrics to life. We'll take another quick break. When we return, the conversation continues.
GBC at 88, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana. GBC at 88, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana.
Welcome back. Our panel for this roundtable, Mr. Yaw Boadu-Ayeboafo, Chairman of the National Media Commission, Mr. Francis Kokutse, who is a journalist, a seasoned one, worked with the Ghanaian Times and other newspapers for years. On our Zoom platform, Ibrahim Alhassan, representing the EIB Network tonight. He works there as a journalist. And Nana Yaw Kesseh, a journalist with the Despite Media Group, who is also representing us on our telephone platform. Perhaps I'll start with you, Ibrahim, if I may, on our Zoom connection. What do you think the media today has lost, or what have we lost sight of? I'm asking this in terms of how far we've come in terms of our subjectivity and when it comes to the ideas of being polarized. Someone asked us on our screens about how should we perform creditably when even our House of Parliament is equally divided right down the middle, 137 on both sides. What have we lost sight of in this polarized media space?
Well, Thelma, we've lost sight of the figures you just related to. The fact that we have 137 for NDC in Parliament, 137 for NPP in Parliament, should have told we journalists that we need to be in the middle. be as objective as we can, of course, and then be impartial. At worst, we balance the reports. Unfortunately, Thelma, the question about polarization and the role we play, whether consciously or unconsciously, is from journalists who have decided to become politicians, either as a result of where they work, the media houses they work in, and their ownership, or they electing themselves to allow political party considerations to cloud their judgment or their reports or their work. Elsewhere, journalists can tell you, I belong to the right, I belong to the left, and still go ahead and execute their responsibilities diligently. Down here, the lines are so blurred. And so if we want to tackle this, then we should be looking at media ownership as well, because it plays a huge part in the objectivity or otherwise of journalists. See, the challenge might not necessarily be the owner holding a whip and standing on the journalist to toe one particular line or the other. But it's as if the media people, the journalists, have become robots. And once you work with a station whose owner, at least size would say NPP, your thinking should go along those lines. Once you work with a media house whose owner is NDC, then you're thinking, your work, professionalism, everything is thrown out of the window, and you must tilt that way. And you see nothing wrong if it's emanating from the side that you tilt towards. And you see everything wrong if it emanates from the side that you tilt against. So the challenge is that as journalists, we are refusing to be professionals. We all vote. Everybody votes. And there's popular phrase that even the chairperson of the Electoral Commission votes. But that doesn't stop the chairperson of the Electoral Commission from, at least on a face value, being fair to everybody and ensuring that the grounds are as even as they can possibly get. Now, we must also be bold enough. The hypocritic journalist is where the challenge is, Thelma. So you have a journalist who, for all intents and purposes, is threatening to say the NDC, but they don't want you to mention that. They themselves, from the word go, will not disclose this. Elsewhere, it happens. See, people who work with media houses like Fox, many of them, if you monitor, some of them even publicly declare their political stance. MNBC publicly declare their stance. But down here, because we want to fake neutrality, we belong to NDC, all right, but we won't say it. We belong to MPP, all right, but we won't say it. But our actions and the work we do... Isn't that dangerous, though,
Ibrahim, to assume that because
Yes.
someone holds a divergent view, then necessarily that person belongs to another political party? Isn't that problematic?
That's very problematic. Far from that. Far from that. I'm not talking about holding one view against one side this time around and holding another view against the other side. The listeners, the viewers, the readers, they know. That's not what I'm talking about. Of course, but that's what journalism is supposed to teach us. Be critical, regardless of whom your criticism is against or being critical is against and what have you. Be critical. Be on the side of the masses. And if there's anything I've learned in my more than 10 years of journalism practice, is the fact that the masses do not have a mouthpiece. The least you can do as a journalist is to be the mouthpiece for the masses. And you can never go wrong with that. But when you decide to become mouthpiece for people in authority, for political parties, that's where your judgment is clouded. And many a times, you leave the masses behind because you are unable to critically examine policies and programs to ensure that people in authority do the needful for the benefit of the masses.
Right.
And that's the challenge. So until and unless we as journalists draw a line in the sand and say that, see, you can belong to party A, party B, but when things are wrong, say it as it is, then we'll all be better off for it.
Let me bring Nana into this. Nana, do you think media ownership is a threat to media freedom?
It is. It is. For instance, a private man, as part of his business, it establishes a radio station, and that private person supports party A or B. He employs you as a journalist to work for him to host his morning show or whatever. You have a divergent opinion from what he holds. What network are you going to use to propagate that opinion that you have? So in talking about how media is shaping the notion of the nation and how journalism is turning out, one of the critical issues that I think we should be addressing is ownership of media. Look, I can tell you now that if you are looking for a radio frequency in Accra, you will not get. But there are political party gurus who have the frequencies on their shelf. They are even not operating it. You will have to go and look for them, pay huge sums of dollars for them in order to have this frequency. Why are the frequencies being given to the politicians? Because you share the idea that I also have. And so if I am in power, I have to give you the frequency so that you establish the radio station in order to propagate what I believe in. And I think that is one of the greatest, threats to journalism in this country.
Nana, don't go too far. The chairman of the NMC is here. Perhaps we can put that question to him, then he can clarify some of these things.
But it goes beyond him.
The idea, at least the idea that you placed on the table, if he has a reaction, I'll be willing to hear it. Ms. Francis, I'll come to you in a bit. Are the frequencies being given to politicians?
Really? The National Media Commission has nothing to do with frequency. It's a National Communications Authority. Ghanaians always get it wrong because they assume that the National Media Commission is the one that is distributing frequency.
A great opportunity
in fact,
to set the record straight.
Under the broadcasting bill, there's a broadcasting bill. I said that one of the difficulties that we have as a people is the fact that we have operated liberal broadcasting without any rules at all. It is now that we're in the process, and each time that there's a change of government, they put it on ice. And it's trouble. We're fighting the two, right to information and then the broadcasting. And when we got the right to information, everybody went to sleep and forgot about the broadcasting law. It is the broadcasting law that will set the basic guidelines on how to set up a broadcasting station and all that. And so the National Communications Authority, as at now, is a body that is clothed with the authority to allocate frequencies. If the broadcasting bill is passed, the architecture that we are constructing there is that since we have responsibility for media content and they don't have anything, they look at the marketability and the functionality.
But you always have the opportunity to
what we
interfere
means,
if there's a problem.
No, we cannot interfere. We only advise. When you are to consult people, consultation is not a term of art, right? And so it does not define that, because if I suggest something to you, Thelma, and you think that you don't want it, you throw it away.
When the ministry suggested, for example, removing some of GBC's platforms from some of the channels from some of the platforms.
GBC is under the direct control of the National Media Commission. And that's the reason why when the government decided that they were going to take, we said no. Because it is within our mandate. We are managing state-owned media on behalf of the people of this country. And so that one is a different fight altogether. And we resisted it. What I'm saying is that we must understand some of these basic things. Yes, under the new architecture, because we have responsibility for content management of the state-owned media, there's a provision there that will cede that part of the allocation to the National Media Commission. And then we will advise the National Communications Authority
on who to
issue the frequency. In that case, we will have a responsibility. And when it happens and we fail, then Ghanaians should blame us. Right. But as of today, we don't even know. In fact, I was at Graphic. We wanted to do a study on how frequencies were allocated. It was so opaque. We did not get the kind of information that we're looking for. And so the thing is that sometimes you hear that, yes, you think There are people who have gotten frequencies, who they are not using it. Some of them, they sell it at very high price to other people and to use. But I'm saying that one of the flaws is that we liberalize without providing ourselves with some guidelines.
A clear-cut structure.
Because of Radio I. When Radio I burst onto the scene, the government was in a rush to liberalize. And they looked at people who they thought were understanding of their and so they gave the multimedia group and those people some of the GBC frequencies were given to them to start. Yeah, but we have come to a time that we all need to rethink. In fact, the National Media Commission had guidelines on media, and inside that guideline, there are provisions as to technically who must be given a frequency, who must own a media house in this country, but because they are not bound by what we suggest, and even within ourselves, they are only guidelines, they are not regulations. The NCA, the NCA is responsible to a minister. The National Media Commission is not responsible to any minister. We are independent. We are responsible to the people of Ghana and to the Constitution. But because of the money, the money is the issue. the money that they are raising from the sale of those frequencies is good money. I think that no government under the present circumstance is willing to cede that.
Are you able to give us an idea how much we are talking about?
No, I don't know, because I have I am not part of it.
I've heard a few figures, but since
so
you don't know.
But the last time it was about 20 million CDs or something. Wow. Yeah, it is big money. Yeah. It is not a small. It's about 20 million. But the point is this: that when you own a media house and you have invested this amount of money, that's only the frequency, buying your transmitters and all that, and you recruit people who will just go and do. We have been advising somebody. One of the questioners was asking whether we monitor. Yeah, we do monitor, but we cannot impose our views. And since he's a tutor of a college of education, I will advise that he goes to read the provisions in the Constitution, particularly chapter 12, article 162 to 173. He should go and read that so that at least he can inform himself. That the next time when he's asking any question, because if you recruit anybody, I've been talking. There's some particular station in Kumasi. I have gone to see the owner about 2 times. That if he's not very careful, one reckless turn on his station, his whole life investment will vanish. The next day, the journalists who are working for him and they are creating the problem, they will look for employment somewhere. They will be gainfully employed while he will be pecuniary.
Right. Let's pick the final words of Nana Yaw. I know that you have to leave us very soon. Have our loyalties been compromised as journalists? I'm asking this because journalists are on very low salaries, and there's in many instances no insurance and very little medical backup for people who work in the space. Have these things led to our loyalties being divided so that we no longer serve the people, but we are forced to serve ourselves and our families?
Well, I wouldn't say loyalty has been compromised or something, but it is survival of the fittest, my dear. In the private sector, for instance, this is a private person who is established his business, as lawyer Ayeboafo said. You're also fighting for a living. You have the opportunity to be employed by this private person. And he tells you, you cannot do this in my station. You cannot do A, B, C. At the end of the day, you also have to put bread and butter on the table for your family. So what do? That is the challenge. It is the big challenge. And for me, that is one of the biggest threats to journalism and its positive impact on the society in Ghana.
What do you think can be done to address them? Because the inequalities are huge. Even within the same media network, the disparity can be sometimes very disturbing. There are those who are making so much, and then there are those who are making so little. How can we bridge the gap?
It will take a long time for that gap to be bridged, but at least we can make the first step. And for me, the first step is what lawyer Ayeboafo said, that yes, we want to do media pluralism. But what are the guidelines? Okay, you cannot say that you are liberalizing your media front, and for that matter, everybody can do whatever he or she wants, and that's it. Nobody is checking the other. Nobody is putting somebody in check. That should not be mistaken to mean that I am talking of censoring media content. No, I'm not saying that. But if there is a broadcasting bill, why are we not eager to look at it, to do what we have to do with that bill? Why are we not, in haste to do it? Because in there, you will see that if you establish a media house, you cannot go beyond A, B, C, D. You cannot just go and employ somebody to come and sit behind your console to be talking because the person is fluent, the person can articulate views, and people seem to like what he is doing, and that is journalism. No, we must come from somewhere. And the basis for that somewhere will be that bill if it eventually sees the light of the day. And so I think that we are not doing too bad, but I think that we are not where we are supposed to be. And something needs to be done urgently.
How do we survive in this competitive world when cost of living is high, but media is chasing numbers now because of new media? We're looking at how many people are live streaming what we are doing, how many people are watching at every point in time, and advertising revenues continue to dwindle for traditional media organizations, while the opportunities for new media, social media, is on the rise. Hence, the chase for numbers.
Is that if you want to profiteer from journalism, then you are in the wrong profession. Seriously, if you want to profiteer from journalism, I don't see how you do it genuinely. And I'm thinking that if you are a journalist and you look at these salary disparities that you talked about, you will have to be looking at something you can do privately that is legal and genuine to give you additional source of income. But if your salary and whatever you earn from where you work is what you want to depend on, that is where some of us deviate into other areas that we as journalists are not supposed to venture. But I'm thinking that if you are a journalist, and especially those of us in the private sector, and you want to make a meaningful life, you must look at what you can do to earn additional income rather than thinking of becoming the mouthpiece of a politician or a business mogul in order to champion his ideas, whether he's wrong or right. You are free to talk about it. You are free to address inequalities in societies and stuff like that. Because if you want to be paid by somebody, you want to be the mouthpiece of somebody in order to earn something at the end of the month, we'll continue to be wondering in where we are now. But I think that journalism is a call to service. And if you understand that it is a call to service and you are willing to accept what that call comes with, then we should be able to stand the test of time, whether good or bad, and to look at additional avenues of, getting extra sort of income rather than doing what we are not supposed to do by the tenets of this profession.
Nana, thank you for making time to join our discussion this evening. I know that you have to take leave of us, so we'll permit you to do that now, and we'll connect with you some other time. Very good.
Thank you for having me
this evening. Nana Yaw Kesseh is a journalist with the Despite Media Group. This is a special roundtable for GBC at 88. We're looking at journalism beyond the headlines, and some of the famous voices and faces that you've seen on the show since we started last week have been sharing their perspectives of the happenings within the media space. The chairman of the National Media Commission, Yaw Boadu-Ayeboafo, is here, and Francis Kokutse, also a journalist, is also here with us. Ibrahim Alhassan still on our Zoom platform, and we'll continue to engage you for a few more minutes before we leave. I'll pick your thoughts now, Mr. Kokutse. When we talk about the attrition rates in the journalism space and the conversations around poor remuneration and Sole and PJ and all that, they didn't start today. They're private jobs.
Okay.
So journalists, because my other brother said, Nana Yaw said about find something to do for yourselves. Sometimes it's the day job that suffers. It's the main job that suffers. So people are at work and they're working on their private stuff. but they have to do it because there's no bonuses coming in for many of these journalists. The medicals are a problem, and so they are finding clever ways of even jumping one ship and hopping onto another. What are your thoughts on these?
I think journalism in the past was more of passion. And those who got into it were so passionate with the job that they didn't think about money.
Has that changed now?
It has changed. You see, I remember Brother Kokutse when he bought a car. It was news all over. A reporter buying a car was news. You know, people condemned it, that it was rushing. You shouldn't buy a car.
So where's the journalist's reward?
No, I'm just trying to let you see the way things were in the past.
Okay.
That, I mean, we accepted things. We could work from ministries to graphic and types those days without thinking. But now, the society has changed. You see, people to school were walking barefoot. I don't see any child walking barefoot these days to school. So I think the way society has changed, practitioners to have changed to meet the changes that we see today. Every young journalist wants to be in a car, wants to buy a house before he attains the age of 35. You know, these things have contributed to what we see today. But I think that if we put in place certain regulations, these things will not happen.
What regulations would they be? Should media owners be pressed, especially when it comes to the private sector? Because the government sector, the salaries are quite straightforward. But even there, the complaints are that they could be better. Yeah. Are you saying that media owners should be impressed to set limits or to set bars for how to pay professionals?
I don't understand why a media organization should exist without any pay structure. That somebody can take about 10,000 and somebody taking
as little as 300 to this 400 to this amount.
You know, there must be structures. You shouldn't create a situation where all you think is that this is my platform, come and work there and be happy because I've given you a platform to work and accept whatever I'm giving you. There should be a pay structure.
People are saying follow the numbers these days, Mr. Ayeboafo, and it's new media.
Well,
so we are looking, even this program, we are streaming, and so we are looking at how many people are watching us across our social media platforms. It's a numbers game, but it's not always a numbers game when it comes to the salaries.
Well, it's not you see, the numbers are good, but the numbers should not be the focus. Because if the people perceive you to be not credible, the numbers would dwindle. We should never deceive ourselves, right? I mean, the thing is that there might be some professionalism in the thing that we do. I mean, I don't totally agree that charlatans have just emerged. Charlatans have existed in their job all the time. That's why the gutter journalism emerged in the US and all that. But our society generally is that charlatanic tendencies have increased in all professional fields, whether in medicine, police, whatever. I mean, it's now more diffused than before. In the past, people were a little more discreet in the things that they do. Today, some of them are so brazen that they don't care who is watching them. Once they will grab, and then they explain away that, oh, it is poor salary. If poor salary is the reason, then why should we be commenting about the policeman standing by the roadside who is taking the 5 cedis? Is it also not about his salary? And so then it means that we have lost the moral ground of criticizing anybody. I mean, some of us, we take the president to cleaners. The words that we will use for the president, let one of us use the same words about those people. See what will happen. And yet they will talk about the president as if the president is not the human being. I mean, the important thing for us is to understand that we are in a profession and we must behave professionally. Let me give you 2 quick examples. Listen, I had somebody gave me hint about some scandal at the Ghana Commercial Bank. At the time, Graphic was running an overdraft from the Ghana Commercial Bank. When Commercial Bank management got to know that we have gotten the story, they liaised with our management. And then the managing director called me as a news editor. He said that, oh, Commercial Bank, I said, look, do you want us to sell the newspaper or you want us to fold that? We are going to do our work. We published the story. We made a lot of sales. Now, Unilever had Blue Band, right? They used to run an advert about Blue Band where the boy ate Blue Band and he was always topping the class. He was the first. And my study of advertisement tells me that is a host because Blue Band is energy. It doesn't develop the intellect. It builds you. If you run fast, I would not agree. I wrote Blue Band nonsense. You know, Blue Band people came to Graphic. They sent a Jake, because his company was running the advert for this. They came to see our management about it. I said, MD, whenever you get money to pay me, that is not my responsibility. My duty is to make sure that the newspaper is credible and the newspaper sells. The advert was subsequently withdrawn. And they changed it, and this time he was running. And that was appropriate because it was about energy. There's a way that we as individuals can contribute to building the things that we are talking about without even offending the owner. Now, when we're talking about this private, they say nobody is saying that. Because the constitution is clear about the state-owned media. The state-owned media is enjoined for diversity and pluralism. That same is not imposed on the private media because people must understand. But what you must not do is that if you want to propagate only NDC or MPP, do that. But make sure that you do not do any propaganda about the other party. So
who propagates the welfare of the journalist? When we propagate it, charity begins at home. We have to to be alive first.
You cannot, GBC cannot pay you what they cannot have. And within the general milieu of the Ghanaian situation, you know, the last time the Saska service came out with some statistics, we said that about close to 70% of Ghanaians earn less than 3,000 cedis, right? You cannot isolate the journalists out of this and put them somewhere outside the general Ghanaian situation where majority of workers are not getting good salary. So the journalist is equally within this environment. What is not good? And that's the thing that happens with some of the private media. So sometimes they can go for months without paying them anything. You know, sometimes 8 months, 10 months, they have not paid them. And if it does happen, and somebody gives an envelope, you know, you are on 500 Ghana cedis salary. You have not been paid for 10 months. And somebody gives you 10,000 cedis. What are you going to do? That exposes the journalist to that level of temptation, you know, and where there's lack of supervision. Because our friend from the Peace, the Despite group, he was alluding to some of these things happen because of lack of supervision. You know, so if your supervisor doesn't take good note of what you are writing, it will sneak through. And then it creates a problem for everybody. So Thelma, I mean, yes, it is agreed that generally they should look for better conditions. We, from Media Commission, from GJA, we have been engaging media owners on the need to pay their journalists at least something that is reasonable. I mean, we cannot tell them that pay them based on pay them. But if you pay somebody 300 Ghana cedis a month, that is unreasonable. You know, where footballers are earning 500, right? They play football. Some of them, they earn 500.
What they earn a week may be what someone might earn in a year. But let's begin to wrap this up. I'll pick your thoughts
Not Ghanaian footballers,
on Ibrahim Alhassan, a journalist with the EIB Network. Ibrahim, what's the Ghana media that you see? Perhaps I'll ask this of all of us, and then we can rise for this evening. When you think of where you want journalism in Ghana to be, what does it look like?
Continuous improvement, to be honest, of course, that must equally come with improvement relative to the working conditions of journalists. See, let's not look very far. Nigeria, big brother Nigeria, journalists there are better off than journalists in Ghana by margins. In fact, newspapers there, of course, are doing much better than here. You can attribute this to their population and what have you, but the reality is that journalists in Nigeria are doing well, and some other countries in here West Africa. So at least there can be that continuous improvement. Again, the exploitation in the system is way too much, where people are made to work in the name of interning and then learning on the job for years without salaries. And they tell you that the job will pay for itself. And they do that. They tell reporters who are sent on an assignment, they go with the expectation that that's where they are going to earn their salaries. So if you go to an assignment and you get something given to you, to the one who has engaged your services, that's your payment. And that obviously doesn't help relative to the improvement of the sector. And I'm talking about the media fraternity. And I want Ghanaian media to be resolute. One, two, to fight for what is right. And in fighting for what is right, obviously there are risks involved. Big father, Yaw Boadu-Ayeboafo, the chairman for the National Media Commission, related to an article he wrote against a big brand that caused the brand to tweak his campaign. And then, of course, his outfit did not lose that particular gig. I dare say that might not be the case now. If you do that as a reporter, you're kissing your job goodbye, of course. And here I'm relating to private sector where I have experience, because that gig you just made your company lose. If it doesn't return, the company will tell you that that's where your salary is supposed to come from. Not just you alone, all the other colleagues. So if you do something against a big brand that has a bigger purse for advertisement, you are in trouble. And if you ask journalists in Ghana, they'll tell you how stories get killed. That's how stories get killed, especially business stories. If any big brand does business with your media house and any story goes up against that particular brand, rest assured that story will not last. If it airs once, it won't be repeated. If it flies once online, the next moment it will be deleted. That's a reality. But here's the thing. I think what we can do in this instance is get the side of the brand. And it works. So for instance, you have a story about to air or publish. Just hear from the other side. If you get the input of the bigger brand into the story and you put it out there, chances are the brand is already aware about the story. So they won't come heavy on your company. That might result in you having to go answer questions to your superiors. Exactly, fair balance. That's the thing. But the mistake many of us make is that we want to flag the story first before we get a reaction.
All right. So
when
I'll take that.
Do that, it becomes a challenge. Yes. So to wrap this up, I think we're not doing badly. There's more room for improvement, and the conditions of the journalists must equally be improved. Media ownership must be looked at. And yes, the state cannot dictate how much journalists are paid. But I think there can be a conversation along those lines relative to other issuance of license to media owners, renewal of licenses. Just take an audit of the staff, especially those who have been exploited. I told you that there are many journalists who have been working for years in bigger brands without salaries, and they are called service providers. Some are given pittance. Some have to feed off solely, and that must end.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on this roundtable platform. We're very grateful for the opinions expressed. Journalist with the EIB Network, Ibrahim Alhassan there. Mr. Kokutse, I'll pick your thoughts. What's the journalism you want to see? Now, the brand has grown, the sector has grown from passion to censorship to liberalization to freedoms to investigative journalism to risk journalism, and even beyond that to social media. What do you want to see when all this comes together?
I think the Media Commission should start having a conversation with the stakeholders so that together they will come out with some guidelines on the kind of media we want to see in Ghana, salary levels, how it should be done to clean the system. Because if it is left the way it is, nobody's going to do it. So I think, Mr. Ayeboafo, we have a big job.
So, Mr. Ayeboafo, your final word. Here we are. Our rankings when it comes to press freedom has not been the best that we've had so far.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here, and how do we begin to pick ourselves back to the days when we were number 1 in West Africa, number 2, number 3, number 4 in Africa, and those glory days that we envisaged, without going back to the days of censorship and the days of restrictive reporting?
No, we don't need to go there. Let me encourage people, and let me give you an example. You know, in 1995, there was an accident at Jaso. Now, a van carrying beer, had an accident there. The ordinary citizens were feasting on it when they saw a military car coming. So when they saw the military car coming, they knew that they could be arrested, so they ran away. The soldiers stopped, got down, drank as much as they wanted, and carried curtains of the tent and went away. So somebody called us from there. And because we did not have sufficient information to write a news item, I decided to do a feature article. And it did that won me the best feature writer for that year. Now, I was there when some soldiers came. They came to the office. They went to the editor's office. The editor called me. I went there, said the soldiers say I'm wanted at a Burma camp. I said, for what at Burma camp? Because I'm not a soldier and I don't work for Burma camp. So why am I needed at the Burma camp? I told my editor I will not go. I told the soldiers that they should go and tell whoever sent them that I said I will not come. And that their cars don't move without them recording. And that if they are fair-minded and they want to deal with those people involved, they should track the record. I have given them the date and the time that the thing happened. They should check when the car left Accra for Kumasi. And then they can follow through that. Now, this could not have happened before 1993. Yeah. It should not have been possible. I would have been arrested and bulldozed. Look, we went to work one Sunday. We got to Teshi. They stopped our car. The driver had forgotten to take the logbook. He said that they were seizing our car. I asked the driver to go back to the office and bring another car that had a logbook in it. And I had realized that all the cars that they had stopped, the people were standing, it was raining. So I decided to keep the key. So when they came, I said the driver had taken the key. So they waited. When the driver arrived with their new car, they were going to beat him. I called them and I said, the key is here. He said, what? I said, you were trained to stand in the rain. I'm not trained to stand in the rain. We went to work.
Bring
I thought that
you'll
be sensible enough to forgive us, to let us go, because if I can order another vehicle to come, then must tell you that I have authority to use the vehicle. I am bringing this so that people understand the context within which we are operating now. And see that if we check ourselves, a lot of the things that we accuse others of imposing on us will be a thing of the past. And normally in my class, I thought I'm the man of the people. A man of the people is written by Tim Aluko, a Nigerian writer. Now, there's this politician who never does anything right. And anytime that he goes to any event, the first people he looks for are the journalists. And then he gives everybody an envelope. And as you take your envelope and go, he tells his friend, he said, did you see those people? If I don't give them this envelope, they will go and write some stupid thing about me. It must tell our people that they value the money than yourself. Right? It is the money that they are giving you. And if you think that you are not worth more than the money that they are giving you, and therefore you go and take it, it's like come and take food into your big mouth. If you know that you are worth more than the money that they are giving you, please do your work professionally and establish yourself.
We'll have to wrap this conversation here. We've been doing this for almost 2 hours now, and we've come to the end of another special roundtable. Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time to sit with me this evening. I think we could easily have done an extra hour if time were to allow us, because there are so many other things we can unpack from happenings within the media space. But this special roundtable has been made possible because of the partnership we have with ATL. You can purchase an ATL fabric from their shop at number 40 Kwame Nkrumah Avenue, opposite the Swansea Shopping Arcade in Accra, or online at atlfabrics.com. ATL, bringing fabrics to life. This special GBC roundtable has been streaming live on Facebook at Ghana Broadcasting Corporation and also on our radio network 95.7 Unique FM. Chairman of the National Commission, Mr. Yaw Boadu-Ayeboafo, has been a part of this conversation. Seasoned journalist Francis Kokutse has also joined us for this chat. Ibrahim Alhassan, a journalist with the EIB Network, was on our Zoom platform. And Yaw Kesseh, a journalist with Despite Media, was also a part of our conversation. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for making the time. And thank you for being a part of this program as well. Thank you for being a part of the GBC story, 88 years of being a relevant public service broadcaster. And we are celebrating that anniversary this year. 31st July is GBC's birthday. And so as you go about your duties, remember to say a word of well wishes, a word of well wishes for GBC and all of us who work here. And we want to appreciate you also for being a part of our success story. Help us to take you to the next level in the next part of our journey. And we'll be here to keep serving you better. The journalism landscape is still growing, and we hope to see better in the coming years, to get better on our world rankings and to get better with responsibility, to get better with remuneration, and in all the ways that matter. I am Thelma Tackie. Good night.